I'm Dracula.
Yeah, I'm also Dracula.
I'm Frankenstein.
Jesus Christ.
Whoa, bloodlines.
God damn it! All right, that works. Man, Frank, it's such a spooky night, and this laptop is so heavy because you're Skyping in. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that is, well, like, I'm kind of non-corporeal in your sense, so I'm not that heavy.
Well,
and also, laptops weigh like less than a pound.
I'm a very weak person.
Have you thought about getting in more reps at the gym?
I don't go to the gym. I keep planning to. But then my shame keeps me away.
Very similar. Like, do I want to pay $20 a month to just be ashamed in front of people who look better than me? I don't think so.
I mean, that's the thing. You pay the $20 and then you feel good about yourself, and then you don't have to go.
That's just addiction.
Exactly. Anyway, man, this is so heavy. We're going to be recording the podcast, but Tom's being very weird today, very spooky.
Tom's basement's really dark.
It's really dark. We have to record in his basement. But
you know what's spooky about Tom's basement?
What's that?
Is that on top of it is a Comet's Ping Pong Pizza. And in the basement, you might say that there's a Pizzagate brewing. It's a child sex trafficking conspiracy theory.
Jesus Christ, Frank. Tom,
were you guys asleep for Pizzagate?
What?
Were you asleep for Pizzagate?
The only gate I like is Gates McFadden of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
She was pretty great.
She was. Is she dead?
You know that's a wing? A wig?
What?
You know that's a wig?
What's a wig?
They made her hair on that show is a wig.
It's a wig? Oh, there's one episode where it's super long. It's weird. It's distracting. Anyway, Tom, don't spook us out like this so much. It's so scary down here.
Hey guys.
Hey, God.
How's it going? Oh yeah, come on now, guys. Come on.
What is?
Follow me.
Are you doing Pizzagate stuff down here, Tom?
What? What are you talking about? No, I don't eat pizza. I just eat like protein powders and stuff. Yeah, no, I wanted to show off my new home gym that I've been building down here. I'm a little out. I'm sorry. I was blasting my quads. I'm a little out of breath.
Tom, that doesn't look like a gym at all.
What are you talking about? It's just like some weights and a treadmill.
That doesn't look like a weighted or treadmill at all. It looks like a spooky cauldron.
Oh yeah, no, that's just like my whey protein. You know, like I know it looks a little spooky, I know, but like I just had like a little like whey protein, a little bit like flaxseed for my omega 6s.
That's not whey protein. That says Eye of Newt. What kind of bullshit is this?
All right, so like, you know, if like I'm trying to like look really aesthetic, I'm trying to look really like vascular with my like ripped bod. So like a little Eye of Newt, like come on, like stop being a baby, Justin. All the pros use Eye of Newt to get like maximum aesthetic. Watch me, ready?
I don't like this. I'm gonna turn the computer to look at you so Frank can see.
Oh no! Don't show Frank. He might get jealous of these super ripped lats.
Tom, you look really vascular. Have you been taking like HGH?
Does HGH stand for Eye of Newt?
Stands for human growth hormone.
No! This scene will work! You're all bastards! Spooky Halloween, everybody! It's our special Halloween episode. This is not going how I was hoping. I wanted this to be a fun Halloween Spooktacular.
My secondary goal of this podcast is to at least once an episode crush Justin's dreams in some fashion. I feel like I was slacking in the last couple.
fuck you guys.
Oh, wait till we get to Christmas and I outline with you all the things that are weird about Santa Claus.
No listening. It's Halloween time. It's spooky, scary. It's chilly out. We got pumpkins. It's nice and fun, but also dark and brooding like a beautiful man. How do we feel about Halloween, fellas? I have a long, vast history with Halloween. That when I was young, I used to be obsessed, and I would go onto websites year round, and like everybody at school always knew me. That's the Halloween kid. And then
okay,
and then when Halloween came around one year, everybody was like, they were really happy for me because it was like my time, and we had to dress up for school for a little kid Halloween parade, and I showed up dressed as Santa Claus.
Oh, for fuck's sake. So this goes back far.
I'm a very weird man.
And apparently a weird little kid, too.
Probably weirder then, because I was a little fat, round ball of a boy.
I had the normal stuff. Dress up. I drew some adorable pictures of me dressed up as Sonic the Hedgehog. My sister was Tails the Fox. When costumes my grandma made us when we were like 5 and 7 years old. It's pretty adorbs. And then I got older and started Mischief Night was a big thing for me in my neighborhood growing up. I used to hear about the exploits of the older kids and like my older brother. And then really right around the time Halloween should be phased out for me, right around I was getting too old for Halloween, is really when Halloween kind of died in my neighborhood. And I remember I think I did the last Mischief Night stuff that ever happened in my neighborhood. And like I wasn't even that like bold with it. I just kind of like put like a little bit of toilet paper in the tree of like my friend's house. And then like a car drove by and caught me, and the guy just yelled out the window, and I was just like, all right, all right, this is over. Okay. And then ever since then, there's been like 0 trick-or-treaters. And I thought this was like a national phenomenon. I thought that like Halloween was just dying. The post 9/11 fear-mongering had worked and everybody was keeping their kids in. And then one year, it's Halloween night and I need to go somewhere and do something. And I'm driving my car and I turn into a neighborhood in a neighboring town and fucking Halloween bomb exploded. Foreshadowing. Halloween stuff everywhere. Kids out in the street, decorations, and Halloween is alive and well. And it just died in my bodunk piece of shit neighborhood. And now it's just disappointment city, USA.
That's the thing. Halloween,
go, Frank.
Halloween finds a way.
Halloween. That's probably a trackable trend. Like as soon as older families move out of a particular neighborhood, if newer families move in, Halloween just comes back because they have kids. Mm-hmm. But Halloween for me is, similar to Tom. After a certain point in my life, Halloween just died. I distinctly remember the last time I ever went out trick-or-treating. I was maybe 10, or maybe 11. And I dressed up as the Japanese professional wrestler Hayabusa. Which, do you want me to show you what Hayabusa looked like?
Go for it.
Yeah. So I dressed up as Japanese professional wrestler Hayabusa for trick-or-treating. And now Halloween for me is really just a time for me to, watch spooky, scary movies, drink some pumpkin beer, get some leftover candy up in my face. Actually, the first time I had been to a Halloween party in a long time was last year. Was the first time in like maybe 10 years up to that point. And I had literally hadn't dressed up for a Halloween thing since then, because if I went to the odd Halloween party, it was like the grown-up Halloween party where no one dressed up.
Fuck that noise.
It was just one of those things where, Halloween kind of phased out, and all it means to me now is I get to chill out, and the weather gets nice and crisp and cool and comfortable, and it's a fun time.
Real quick, your favorite Halloween costume that you've done?
My favorite was probably last year's, ironically enough, when I dressed up as Guy Fieri.
Nice.
Now, isn't it also true that this was part of a couple's costume?
This was a couple's costume.
Where your wonderful girlfriend partner, I was going to call her partner, but it's kind of important for why this is funny, was also Guy Fieri.
No, so that was originally going to be the plan.
Oh.
That was supposed to be what was going to happen. And that's Hayabusa, by the way. That's who I dressed up as.
Oh, Jesus.
Were you as shirtless as this man is?
Unfortunately not. I was like a little, like 10 or 11-year-old fat kid, so I couldn't do that. So I had a shirt on. But I did dress up as him.
Was it
I bought a white version of that mask.
Was it like a Who Farted t-shirt? I mean...
No, I think it was some kind of t-shirt, but it was like a plain t-shirt. I think I wore like a red t-shirt or something. But so originally the plan was last year for both of us to go as Guy Fieri because she roundly rejected my initial idea of a couple Star Trek costume. And did the same thing this year. Let me tell you this, fellas. Guess who I was ready to order a costume for? I was ready to order Chief Engineer Miles O'Brien.
Yeah!
And go as Miles O'Brien. And she rightfully said, fuck no.
She didn't want to be a Japanese woman?
No, she didn't want to be Keiko, his Japanese wife.
We should specify that Frank's girlfriend is not Japanese.
She's not. She's a white lady. So last year when I went as Guy Fieri, she went as a waitress, like an old-timey 50s waitress.
Okay, that follows.
That works. I like it.
I mean, it's a total cop-out compared to both of you being Guy Fieri, but it works.
I think it also should be noted for the listener that we're all dressed up as Chief Engineer O'Brien right now.
You all kind of are, yeah.
Just so you know. I one year when I had nothing to do, this might be apocryphal because I would tell everybody this, but I'm not sure if I actually did it. But I think I did.
That's a distinctly you problem.
It is. I lie a lot. I just stayed home dressed like Meatloaf.
Wait, is that just you?
I did used to wear a lot more billowy blouses.
How about sleeveless leather vests?
Oh no, that's too risky for me. No, I stick to the Bat Out of Hell era. I'm a joke sex symbol.
Yeah, that's a weird one because you'll hear that of like, oh yeah, Meatloaf, like the soundtrack to like burgeoning sexuality, and it's like, was it?
Yeah, to a certain type of person, to theater kids, and they are a horny lot.
They are a horny lot.
Can confirm.
How about you, Tom?
Well, I discovered myself to I'll do anything for love. Probably my last Halloween costume, which was I had just watched the movie Eyes Wide Shut at like 3 a.m, and I decided at that moment to start making a paper mache mask of myself.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I remember this.
And then over a few weeks, I built it up and made it more and more accurate to my own face. And then when it had the shape, I carefully painted it to look flesh tone based on myself, stood there in the mirror until I had a mask of my own face. Now, I had no idea why I was doing this. It was just I had too much time on my hands. And then I decided, that's really creepy. It was kind of like uncanny. And then I had this brainwave. What if I put it on the back of my head and then wore all my clothes backwards? And I put on like a hoodie so my face was covered, and I did that, and it was incredibly creepy. Now, there are pictures. The pictures are unsettling, but it's if there's any video in motion, it was deeply disconcerting. But one last pro tip to you all, and I'm sure as the two gentlemen from the band Crisscross can tell you, that when you wear your pants backwards, it's really hard to pee in a hurry.
Yeah, and you got to jump.
You got to jump to pull your pants down because you can't undo a fucking belt backwards. Fuck that shit. So
No.
you just got to yank those johns.
You just gotta pull it down.
And pee in the toilet. All right. So,
Justin, did we do your Halloween segment justice?
Yeah, it's fine. It worked.
So, hey, you know what Halloween makes me think of?
What's that?
Serial mail bombing. It's
No.
the week
Oh,
of the.
Let's take that again. No, let's not
I like
do
that.
All right, everybody. It's time for the next segment. We're going to get through it quick. It's a depressing time, and I
It's
don't
a
want
weird
it
one.
ruining this Halloween Spooktacular anymore.
Are we calling it the Spooktacular?
It's a Halloween Spooktacular.
He said, hoisting his fist into the air in triumph.
I'm wearing a jack-o'-lantern on my head, and there's a smiling ghoul right behind you while you're listening. Ah!
This week was a weird one for politics, and it's not fun to talk about.
It's not.
So we're gonna try to not talk about it so much.
What is not funny
Jesus.
and fun and light and lively about a domestic terrorist mailing pipe bombs to various Democratic figures and load it with typos in the address and return address? What's not a hoot about this, guys?
There is one funny thing about it, and that is inside at least one of the devices, there was a piece of material that was made to look like the ISIS flag, but instead of the ISIS flag, it was mudflap sexy ladies, and below that, in sort of faux Arabic writing, was the words "get her done."
Which just kind of hardens my resolve in the theory that this was done by one very stupid man.
Yeah. Oh, no.
Yeah.
This is clearly the product of a chud, of like a MAGA chud who watches nothing but InfoWars and Fox News and, went to Pizzagate rallies and believes in QAnon. And because this person or persons unknown targeted specifically people that the president has had words about in the past.
Here's the thing. Things like this have happened in the past. Right?
Yeah.
But we have a president who fucking condones it. Mm-hmm. Like, this is not normal. This is not... Even the abnormal things that are happening during this presidency are abnormal.
Yeah, they're way more fucked up than abnormal used to be.
Mm-hmm. And we have this president who consistently is revealing himself to be white supremacist, nationalist, racist, fascist. He is consistently creating scapegoats and targeting various groups. He is doing this on purpose. He is doing this to create an enemy. He has done this with Mexico. He's continually doing this to the trans community. He is doing this to what's the other one? What's another one? Cut this. Make me sound smart, Tom.
Oh, the other one is all of it. But boys, it turns out the spookiest thing of Halloween of all is the rising tide of fascism.
Yeah, no, that's one thing. I mean, maybe this bombing situation is a little bit of a fly in the ointment, but for the Republicans, because kind of eerily they've been trotting out this narrative, almost like it's been coordinated, that the left is a violent mob, and they keep using that word. They keep hammering that word and saying that we're extremist and violent. And I think they're laying the groundwork for when they finally push too hard, and there is a little bit of unruly backlash from people. I won't even say on the left, regular people, freedom-loving people, the free people of the world, And that will be their pretext with the already established narrative of a violent mob for, quote, emergency measures, suspensions of certain civil liberties. I have always thought so. I was saying it to folks before the election. I believe that this political moment signifies a coordinated and premeditated conspiracy of a fascist coup by the elements of the Republican Party in the United States. And I don't think that this is an elaborate narrative or fiction.
The Republican campaign slogan going into the midterm is literally jobs, not mobs.
Which, reality means nothing to them anymore. By the way, sort of the consistent firing off of mistruths is it's called fire hosing. It's a documented tactic that was being deployed brilliant effect rather by the Putinist regime. And now we're seeing it in this country. It can happen here. It is happening here. And the big question is what happens after the election. But let's save that for next week.
The all bummer episode of Plaid Lads.
Womp womp. Oh, shh. That's the soundboard for that episode.
This is all too depressing. You know what, fellas? Plaid Lads, let's go to the movies. A spooky movie. Spooky times.
So this week on the pod, the movie we're doing is a movie called Häxan, a silent Swedish documentary horror movie from 1922 by a filmmaker named Benjamin Christensen. And just speaking for myself, it was one of the most remarkable things I think I've ever seen because I had never seen this movie before. And this is the first movie we've done for the show that I haven't seen before, and B, the first movie we've done that I've never heard of before. And I'm amazed that I never heard of it. But I also had the experience because this film is in the public domain, so it's available for anyone to watch on YouTube through library services on their service called Canopy. It's available. But I had the experience of watching it on a computer screen streamed through YouTube, and I thought to myself, I should be seeing this on the screen because this is a remarkable piece of filmmaking. And I was just stunned by everything that was being accomplished there. It is a sort of pseudo-documentary about the nature of superstition and belief in the world, chiefly concerned with belief in witchcraft during the Middle Ages. And he sort of threads the needle on belief in witchcraft and how it was connected to modern experiences of mental health in women, long before that similar feminist texts had sort of taken that tack as well. There was this weird Swedish dude who was sort of making the argument in a very popular and controversial film because it's a film told in many parts. The first part sort of charts the nature of witchcraft and belief in the ancient world, and that was in that early going when I was first stunned by this movie because there's a sequence, and I don't know if you guys were as impressed with this as I was, when he discusses the medieval belief of the nature of the cosmos.
Yes, and
he's illustrating on the screen sort of a circle of fire and an inner circle of air, and then it's clear that it's like a piece of paper of some kind, but it's a physical object that he's manipulating with a pencil. And then he talks about the constellations, and suddenly the constellations appear behind it. And then the planets, and then the planets appear behind it. And then he talks about the ancient belief in outside of the planets and the constellation. They believed that on top rested the heavenly host and God. And he sort of splices in this footage of what looked like dozens to maybe about 100 people dressed as angels, and then a man dressed as God sort of seated at the center. And at first it almost looks like a painting. And then you notice very subtly and very slowly that people are moving in the painting. and that these are actors dressed up as the heavenly host and dressed up as God, and it's just such a painterly image.
I didn't notice that at all. I thought it was a painting.
No, those were all actors.
Interesting. So, like you, Frank, I had never heard of this movie either. But that's when I started watching it, I was like, oh wait, no, of course I haven't heard of it. It's a silent movie. And so I also really enjoyed the early discussion of the cosmology. This is totally anachronistic and bullshit, but it was almost like vaguely Wes Anderson-y with the establishing sort of building of a field of knowledge was
kind of. Yeah. I would not be surprised if he
took some sort of cue from that.
Took something from this, yeah.
And really, I mean, I'm not sure if they award it performances, but I think the real star of this movie was whoever was working that wooden pointer thingy. Whoever was just literally pointing at stuff with that pencil.
I believe it was the director who... he also plays the devil in this movie. Anytime the devil is on screen, that's the director.
Oh, that's great to know. That's great to know.
Now, continuing with that, he shows us a mechanical representation of hell, and there's a fog machine going, and it's spooky. It's scary. But then we get into it. And this is a good 10, 15 minutes.
Oh, it took a long time, yeah. I was kind of wondering what the heck was happening.
Until we get to the next segment where it's finally actual scenes with actors. And it's just showing a basic representation of the medieval belief in witches. Which is some of my...
So when it's in this segment where it shows the belief in witches, it also shows how those beliefs are sort of formulated by people during the time period. And there is a sequence where it illustrates kind of what would happen if you were thought to be in consort, like what that pact would be like between witches and essentially the devil. And there's this sort of old decrepit witch lady, and she's dreaming, and the dream world sort of intersects with hell. And there's, in this sequence, some of the most stunning stop motion I think I've ever seen, which is probably another reason why Wes Anderson has seen this movie, is there's excellent stop motion in it. Particularly the scene where the coins sort of form into shapes and fractals and move into a pile and dance in the air and that kind of a thing. And then there's a little stop motion little monster man that rips through the door. And I thought that was amazing.
The Belrog or the, what's the thing called in Jedi? The thing in the basement?
Rancor.
Crap, I knew this.
It's called a Rancor.
Well, anyway,
but that's the thing about this era of filmmaking, which we've definitely lost something. I blame those New York bastards from the 70s that
I'm scowling. Justin can't see that I'm scowling.
Frank disapproves. So basically, you blame every other filmmaker we've talked about on the podcast up till this moment.
I truly do.
Anyway, Häxan also near the end sort of talks about what you would do if you were accused of being a witch and how witch trials functioned, usually through torture and then death. And then it sort of goes to modern day where it talks about treatment for women with what would be understood as hysteria or anxiety, and posits that those treatment programs that were being enacted at the time, and quite frankly that are still probably being enacted today, are not that far off from just burning women at the stake.
First of all, this movie's really weird because it's so old, and I feel like one of you can correct me in saying this, but it's almost like they didn't know how to make narrative films yet. So this one was, first of all, the director through his text cards is breaking the fourth wall, never even establishes a fourth wall,
which I love so much. There need to be more movies like that. This movie reminded me of two films. One, my favorite horror film of the past like 5 years, The Witch, which is a very similarly just a straight retelling of what people believed at the time, which I think that is the most beautiful and simple way to make a great story. Just what is the truth in there, of belief. The other movie this reminded me of was American Splendor, the Paul Giamatti pseudo documentary film about Harvey Pekar, the comic writer, which that also will break the fourth wall and will just insert anecdotes. The real man will be there. In this film, he throws in, they show off all of the different torture devices that would have been used and explain how they worked. And then he says, one of my actresses wanted to try out the thumb screws. The thumb screws. And so there's a shot of her, and it's very it's very odd seeing like this, like especially old timey things of seeing an actual smiling person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And she's having fun with it. This film has the single most erotic shot I've ever seen in any film ever. Now it is showing the devil opens the door and he's barrel chested and he knocks. And there's a woman in bed with her husband and she's asleep. And then there's just a close up of her face and just let's see if we can get my wet mouth noises. Just a
I know what you're talking about.
Just a quick lick of her lips, and I was scandalized. Now in this film, we see
you were also turned on.
I mean, a little. It's impossible not to. But there are literal like orgy scenes and stuff in this. Well, there are naked women in this film. We're not seeing nipples or anything.
It was close enough. There is full body uncovered nudity in this film, and you're not seeing it frontally. But it was scandalous enough that this movie was banned in the United States for a very long time.
I understand it. I think it still should be.
Of course it was. Now, I was going to say that this movie had some excellent back. This had some of the best back I've ever seen in a film. Some of the most tasteful, erotic back. Anyway, so that was one thing about this movie I was sitting there thinking, watching it, was that this movie could only be Swedish at that point in time because the way it talks about the level of religious repression and belief and superstitious nonsense and sort of the calling out of religious superstition as a destructive cancer that's totally ridiculous. America in 1922 was very much embroiled in that kind of lunatic thinking, and I don't think this movie would be allowed in the United States. I think there's areas where it still probably would be.
Oh God, no, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
This is a scathing critique of the patriarchy
and patriarchal religious structures.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God, did I hate the fucking monks? The
fat monk. The fat monk is the best.
All the fat monks. All the monks were fat except for the skinny one, the little bastard who gets a boner and gets
tortured.
He does. Well, he wants more torture. He's a masochist.
Yeah. Now, and you said, as Tom said, that it was like non-narrative, but there is a long segment that actually takes place over a few of the segments in the film.
Yeah, now I'm not sure if that was a technical consideration, but they kept saying "to be continued."
Yeah,
right now.
Yeah,
I assume that those were points for brief intermissions at the time.
Well, I mean, it was a lot of people smoked a lot more, maybe.
I think they were boner breaks.
Yes. But there is a narrative in that a man is suddenly ill and a household blames a poor old woman. She is tortured and she confesses. And we see this amazing sequence of a witch's Sabbath, including devil butt kissing.
So that's what I thought you were going to say was the most erotic thing in the movie. is they talk about how when you do a witch's Sabbath, they would all line up to kiss the devil's behind, and they use the word behind. And there is an out-and-out medieval drawing of these witch ladies giving the devil a rim job and just like face deep in it, and it is hilarious, and it made me laugh very hard.
No, we were talking about how Wes Anderson may have been influenced by this, but this film has some of the most disturbing imagery I have seen in film, and I could not help but think of David Lynch.
Yeah, this was a movie that was a favorite of the emerging surrealists of the early to mid 20th century in America. And he was probably in that crowd because there is a cut of this movie that was released in 1968 called A History of Witches that cuts it down from like an hour and 45 minutes to about 68 minutes. And it has a jazz soundtrack and is narrated by William S. Burroughs. So that's most likely the version he would have seen. But I'm almost certain that he saw this movie at some point in his life.
Now there was a moment that truly shocked my senses. I don't know if you guys experienced this as well. So the movie ends, and it's asking questions about how are we really treating people any differently, and it ends with a shot of witches being burned at the stake.
Yes.
And then the final title card says slut. What?
It just means the end in Swedish.
I don't think so, Frank.
It just means the end in Swedish.
Oh, Lord. Yeah.
I read it as slut.
Yeah, the original slut shaming. Kinda. I mean, we talked about this in Black Narcissus, and this movie also had a scene of convent hysteria. But yeah, this whole thing seemed to be a sort of I mean, it was from 1922, so it wasn't a super woke, modern, feminist kind of interpolation of what was happening in the minds of women, and it's sort of like condescendingly patronizing sympathy for the now hysterical woman. Hysterical, obviously, hysterectomy. It just means a brain sickness of the womb. You've gone womb crazy, so it's not like the least misogynist thing to say a woman has. But one thing I thought the movie did, and I think this would have had a lot more weight in its contemporary time, was that it was this unspoken thing in the film. This movie came out in the interwar period in Europe, 1922, between the world wars, and it sort of showed shocking terror and gore and depravity, and sort of showed a deep condemnation of deeply encrusted institutions in European life, both in the past very irreverently against religion and the state, and then modernly with science and medicine. And then it showed the modern hysterical woman had developed kleptomania, and she stole a ring from a jeweler, and then she broke down in tears and sort of explained her plight, and finally referenced something that I thought was in the background, which was there was the image of the devil and the diabolical, and then she referenced the war and how her husband had died in the war and how she hadn't been the same since. And I think maybe that sort of this ultimate level of destruction is being equated, the devil, with humans, man institutional depravity to each other. And I think this movie was in dialogue with the terror that humanity as a species encountered in the First World War at new unprecedented levels. And I think that was something maybe it was struggling with, and it was kind of like an aha when she finally brought up the war there.
Yep.
Says this observer.
No, that's actually
Definitely, yeah.
a really smart observation, because I hadn't thought of that.
Go on.
I had not thought of that. This was one of those movies where I really hope to one day see it on a really big screen at like a repertory theater or something, because it's a stunner, folks. See it at least once in your life.
It's an amazing film.
Frank?
Plaid lads.
Shut the
go
fuck
to
up,
the
Frank!
music.
Plaid lads like music. This week we listened to the 1979 junior. Is it not sophomore? It's junior. Record by Talking Heads, the second collaboration with Brian Eno. This album came hot on the heels of 1978's More Songs About Buildings and Food, and like I said, it was the second collaboration with Brian Eno. I keep wanting to say Brian Wilson for some reason. Anyway,
that would be a really interesting record.
Guys, the clock has not run out on that. I believe all the
that could still happen.
All the relevant parties are still
together
with us.
Brian Wilson would just make them record Smile again.
Yeah, he's just keep redoing Smile.
It would just be an endless cycle of David Byrne going, "Ah!" and then Brian Wilson being frightened by this, startled, and going, "Ah!"
Brian Wilson doing his spooky hand thing.
Brian Wilson doing his spooky routine of being a schizophrenic man.
Ooh.
Yeah, God. Anyway, so this record, this is back when they made records real quick, and Talking Heads tried to go into the studio and tried to just repeat the process, but they were feeling a little uninspired and things weren't turning out right. So producer Brian Eno had the band retire to the apartment of bassist Tina Weymouth. They hired one of those event soundboard trucks that they would use at like Woodstock or what have you, and it parked outside, and they actually ran the wires out of the window of her apartment down to the van. And Brian Eno sort of tasked them with the writing prompt of various dystopic things. So obviously this record has the biggest hit that we all know from it is Life During Wartime, which sort of tells the point of view story of urban guerrillas and their lives. Yes, urban guerrillas.
So my question, I re-listened to this album and I loved it again. Like I love almost all Talking Heads. My question I always have for myself is, why do I like this so much more than literally anything Paul Simon has ever recorded? Is it just that Talking Heads are great and Paul Simon is bad?
Paul Simon is great. You're an idiot. Burn in hell. But I have an interesting... years ago, my brother came up to me and said, Justin, he put his hand on my head. I was 20 at the time, so it was...
But you were a little baby boy.
I was a little baby boy. And he said, Justin, I need you to get into the Talking Heads for me. I looked at him and I thought, I don't understand that. But I do understand it now, because the Talking Heads are the sort of band that I like everything I've heard of them, but I can't get into them. I don't know why that is. But I can't bring myself to feel any ownership over it, even though I love everything I've heard. But if you asked me what I would prefer to listen to right now, Talking Heads, but Paul Simon, you know.
I am the opposite. The other records that I tend to do the spiel about the records when we introduce the segment, and every other record I go on Wikipedia and I gather some information. This I'm just spouting off because I am a Talking Heads fanboy. I collect their records on every medium I can. I love learning about them. I do feel like an ownership over them. My only regret in life is that I didn't get into Talking Heads when I was like a teenager or in college or something. I found them when I was like 24, and it was like this eureka moment, because I've always had this fascination with certain artistic elements. It's really vague and hard to describe. This is an inept description. We use a lot of malapropisms, but there's an element of David Byrne's artistic abstract detachment looking at modern life that is perhaps reminiscent of Bauhaus, of minimalism, modernism. I don't know if these are inept, like I said, but it is something that speaks to me on a profound level. I love them. I love what they do. Chris France, shout out to Mr. France, 4 on the floor, everything's just strimple straight down the middle. Simple, straight down the middle, 4 on the floor drum beats, with maybe a little
James Brown. This
is correct. So yeah, this was the last Talking Heads record that, in a lot of ways, you can argue this is the last Talking Heads record, because after this, they went into their Brian Eno, again, I was going to say Wilson, experiment phase, where they just played Afrobeat-inspired loops that they stitched together, and then Dave Byrne came back and overdubbed vocals, and Adrian Belew overdubbed guitars. So this was the last one where they went together and they wrote songs and they tracked them as a band in the old-fashioned sense. I love this record. Any favorite songs or moments, fellas?
Life during wartime, for sure.
Mm-hmm. I'm a big. Is it called Guitar?
Electric Guitar.
Electric Guitar. It's a very spooky song.
Oh, that's the one thing about Talking Heads is they're perfect for this because they're so spooky, even when they're not trying to be.
And I also nominate David Byrne for the most scared voice in rock and roll.
He does have a pretty good scary voice. The dude from Bauhaus also has a pretty fantastic scary voice. I would also say big ups to Heaven. Heaven's a great song.
Heaven's a great song.
Beautiful song.
I think this reveals something about myself and maybe my distance from Talking Heads, but my favorite is Mind.
The second
song, because it's the, I guess, least intellectual. Not least intellectual. I like the intellectualness of it, but it's the most interpersonal. You know, it's something I can like put myself in, though that's not what I need to find in all music, but
for sure the Mind is it's a second person. It's David Byrne addressing some sort of other, sort of complaining that all of the elements of human existence can't change this person's mind, and he despairs that I need something to change your mind. Science can't change you. I can't change you. Religion can't change you. What's the matter with you? And that's sort of a big trope of early Talking Heads is communication breakdowns and David Byrne not being able to connect with people, which then it's no surprise that I don't think he's ever sought or gotten a official diagnosis, but he regards himself as probably being on the autistic spectrum, which if you watch interviews or, it seems like that might follow. Yes, Justin's doing an impression of his eyes darting around the table tendency, which you can see in Jon Favreau's, was it Dinner for Five?
Mm-hmm.
And this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. But also they're very much performance artists. I mean, they met at art school at the Rhode Island Institute of Design and
RISD.
RISD, as it is called on the streets. And he's very involved in sort of conceptual art, and people don't realize especially us looking back through the decades at footage from them in that time, but even their clothes were always a costume. When they started off, you don't think it means anything, but they wore khakis and golf shirts. They were trying to be these preppy or yuppie characters. Later on, they started wearing black jeans, the ultimate post-punk uniform, black jeans and a t-shirt, the most simple, but apparently the black jeans weren't available in the United States, and they were trying to evoke some sort of biker gang thing. Failing at it, I might add. So I don't know what they were doing for this record, but they're always very couched in sort of complicated artistic ideas and whether or not they pulled them off. So some of Dave Byrne's weirdness is probably attributable to that. Says this observer.
I had this thought. This is not about this album, but there are, if you're a songwriter, do one of these and you will be set for life. Either write a Christmas song, it will be played every year, or write a song about a serial killer in the 70s, because it will be played whenever it is talked about in any form of media.
Yes. Or write a song about how you're sad about the fact that you got drafted into a war, because that will be played in every sequence of the Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Or write a song about how this is not your beautiful wife, and it will be used in every movie.
In everything.
Whereas this record includes songs that talk about animals and how they're out to get us, about air and how it's polluted, about paper and
How it can cut your fingies.
about cities and how there are different ones, and it's tough to choose.
It's alienating and hard to live in them.
One sort of behind the scenes things maybe about this record, and then we can move on, is if you think that the vocal performance sounds like Brian Eno is chasing David Byrne around the control room with a microphone trying to get him to sing into it as David Byrne moves around erratically, then you are correct. That is how the vocals were tracked. They went not to an isolated sound booth, not where he was wearing headphones, but instead in the control room where Brian Eno in arc Brian Eno fashion encouraged him to just start moving around like the weirdo he is, and Brian Eno's job was to make sure that a microphone was in front of his mouth. And oh boy, I loves me some Talking Heads. You know what else I loves?
What do plaid lads love?
Plaid lads love Frasier?
What?
Dr. Frasier Crane has bought his father a telescope because he wants his father to do some stuff. Martin enjoys the telescope and meets a nice woman also looking at him. But when she calls on the telephone, he says she's not his type. But she is his type. He's just afraid because he uses a walker. Made me cry. It was beautiful. This week on Plaid Lads Love Frasier. It's not dinner at 8. That was last week. It's not I Hate Frasier Crane. It's Frasier Season 1, Episode 5.
Can I talk about how I didn't like this episode?
Oh, you son of a bitch! God damn it, Frank! What don't you like about this, except for the revolting disgustingness of Frasier in this episode?
What I don't like about it is it's not funny, and I didn't buy the schmaltzy thing at the end. Stupid.
Oh, I bought it so hard.
And it opens the door, and hi, I'm Martin. It's nice to finally meet you. Fuck you, old man. You date 5 different women over the course of the show. We know that this is not, the rest of your life, and that you're going to date some bawdy bartender and a waitress and a cop. Like, we know what's going to happen.
Yes, but this is the beginning of a beautiful romance of his life. That he's allowing romance back into his life ever since not only his wife died, but also that he doesn't feel like he's a full human being. But Daphne makes him know that he's a full human being. It's a beautiful thing, and it made me cry. God!
Justin, put your shirt back on.
No!
You know what, Martin Crane? You're a broken old man, and no one will ever love you.
Frank
Says
McDevitt
me.
hates Martin Crane and John Mahoney. You heard it here first, folks. He's got something against the guy. You opened up the entire podcast showing, thinking about pushing him down a fucking staircase. What did John Mahoney do to you,
What did John Mahoney do to you?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not the one who killed him by besmirching Barton Fink.
Jesus Christ. Get off my back!
So, it's just innocent fun and games, like looking into other people's apartments using a fucking telescope.
Disgusting.
Oh yeah, we all have a voyeur in us.
Jesus Christ.
What's fucked up
Frasier.
is that the episode says she's into it.
She is. She's looking right back at them. Apparently Seattle's full of looky-loos.
Yeah.
Bunch of weirdos.
They do pay lip service to how weird it is when Martin says, I used to lock guys up for doing this.
And Frasier does have his immediate comeuppance when he realizes he's being watched as well, but I don't think he learned any lasting lesson from it.
Frasier Crane doesn't learn any lasting lessons. That's the point of the show.
He is a true creep scumball. He's
not that. Martin's more of a scumball than he is.
Martin's more of a butt chunk.
Guys, whoa. I thought this was the Plaid Lads with Justin and Frank, not Man About Town with Derek Mann, who hates...
Was last week's episode.
Who hates Frasier Crane.
Yeah, who hates Frasier Crane.
You guys are being saying bad things about Frasier.
Fuck Frasier, I'm done. How's it going, fellas?
To close out, gentlemen, I did not prep this with you beforehand, which was my mistake. I thought we might introduce a new segment.
This seems like the right time. I think we are primed and ready. Let's hear it, Frank.
Where we recommend things that we have been watching or
Absolutely.
reading or listening to this week.
Absolutely.
Sure. As the lads might remember, before one of our recordings, I was waxing rhapsodic about a British fantasy show from the 80s that only lasted 2 seasons called Robin of Sherwood. Or no, 3 seasons. 3 seasons. 2 good seasons, 1 bad one. It's excellent. Speaking of the high production values and the merger of fantasy and sort of medieval life of Häxan, Robin of Sherwood does that really well. It sort of merges folklore with a very realistic depiction of life during the 12th century, during the reign of King Richard III and then King John I after Richard dies. Or Richard I, rather, Richard the Lionheart, and then King John I. And it sort of interweaves the Robin Hood myth with like actual medieval life and pagan folklore. Great show. Just stop watching it once Sean Connery's son takes over the role because he is fucking terrible.
Yeah, fuck that guy.
Sean Connery.
Sean Connery. I keeping in the theme. I would like to recommend. I always have one podcast that I'm binging through and getting caught up on. This one's called Teen Creeps. It's about young adult genre fiction, hosted by Lindsay K.
I was going
Ty.
to say it's about Justin.
Hosted by Lindsay K. Ty and Kelly Nugent. It's a wonderful podcast. They are 2 hilarious, wonderful people. They are very open about their struggles with depression, and it's very funny as well.
Lindsay K. Ty, excellent follow on Twitter. Her Twitter feed is very good and
Nice.
interesting and smart and funny.
Nice. So I recommend that to everybody. It's great.
Okay. So I don't watch a lot of regular TV or listen to any podcasts. But one thing I just started, which is I'm trying to learn French for basically no reason whatsoever. And I decided to find a good French show. I was really recommend it for, incorporating a language. But a really pleasant surprise, I found it to be a really excellent show. And I got hooked after the first episode. It's on Netflix. In English, it's called Call My Agent. In French, it's 10%, which is 10%, how much an agent takes. And it's just this Parisian talent agency, and it's kind of like a extras Curb Your Enthusiasm kind of mashup, sort of with a lot of, well, I don't know who the fuck they are, but French celebrities come on, make cameos, and it's like a good body character drama with lots of comedy, and enjoying it. Besides that, I'm a big consumer of YouTube channels. Not like PewDiePie and Filthy Frank. I've never seen any of those at all, but like the nerdy learning stuff and the main ones, your Vsauces, etc. But really good one. I've been kind of getting into math and astrophysics of late, and really recommend PBS Space Time. Really good one by PBS Digital Studios, and a really good math channel with really good visual explanations for high-minded math concepts called 3 Blue 1 Brown, which does really good content as well. So I'm Dracula's friend.
I'm Frankenstein's monster.
I'm Dragula.
You're Dracula. You're
I'm Rob Zombie's car.
Dig through the churches and burn
It's
through the
that
witches.
time of year when the ghouls fall in love, and a Dracula is your friend. Frankenstein's here.
Were you
and
depressed and anhedonic this whole episode because you were prepping this fucking song?
It's the most spooktacular time of the year. Lots of people with candy, and my name is Manny, and hello, how are you?
That was less good.
Jingle bells, there's a ghost.
That's more like it. We're
There you go.
Plaid Lads.
Plaid Lads, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, Plaid Lads Pod. My name's Dracula.
Twitter at Plaid Lads Pod.
You can find us on all of your podcast sources on Apple, iOS, and Android devices, all the places you get your podcasts.
iTunes. Give us ratings on iTunes if you listen to us and enjoy.
Follow us on Twitter. Frank's our Twitters are, and he's just spamming you with fake news, so tune in for that.
Yeah, I just started tweeting some bullshit recently because I thought it would be more fun.
And it is more fun. I'm not on Twitter, so I don't see what's happening. Anyway, follow Justin's band at Welcome to Wonderfalls.
Welcome to wonderfalls.bandcamp.com. Welcome _to_wonderfalls on Instagram. I'm almost finished my album. It should be up by the time you hear this episode. It's kind of a spooky album. There's a song about like a dead alien, and there's a witch, and there's some pumpkin pie talk, so get into it.
Creature with the atom brain. Do you do that one?
Yes.
Excellent.
Way to spoil it, Frank. I've got a band too. It's called Elbow Watch. It's elbowache.bandcamp.com. Go check it out, maybe. Why don't you? All right. So I've been Dracula.
I'm Justin. You've broken
I'm Frank.
me,
I'm no
guys.
longer unemployed. All right. We're out. Plaid Lads, everyone. Have a good week.
Join us next week when we'll be talking about the 2014 film Clouds of Sils Maria by Olivier Assayas. I think that's how you say that. Mirror Traffic, the record by Stephen Malkmus and the Jicks, and Frasier Season 1, Episode 6, The Crucible.